Free agency kicked off, and boy, did the Broncos get off to a hot start. I caught up with Pro Football Network's Cody Roark to talk about all the moves they made and how they're going to help the Broncos get back into that playoff hunt next year. So, back again with the one and only Cody Roark to talk some Broncos football. Free agency. Broncos have been going crazy, picked up Ronald Darby, let Philip Lindsay walk, locked up Justin Simmons long term. We're bringing Vaughn back. What's your just quick reaction to, just the flurry of moves that the Broncos made last week?
Well, I think fans on Monday, the legal tampering period began. Broncos fans, and they were my mentions on Twitter. They were frustrated because the team wasn't making any moves. But, the writing has been on the wall. George Payton, the new Broncos GM, said that they were going to focus on re-signing their own guys first before they go out in free agency. And George Payton, he re-signed Shelby Harris to a 3-year deal. And then that same day, he goes out and gets Ronald Darby, who's one of the top cornerbacks on the free agency market. And the Broncos, they had him as the highest-ranking cornerback in free agency. So they got their guy. And, those are great additions. Obviously, Shelby returning is going to help with the D-line. Ronald Darby is going to help with cornerback. Retaining Justin Simmons on a 4-year, $61 million, 35 of that being guaranteed, is going to be great for continuity. And then they go out and they get Kyle Fuller on Saturday. And really right now the Broncos, to me, and I can't even forget to mention the Von Miller club option being picked up. He'll be back. Denver's going all in for this upcoming season. They have a defense right now that on paper they look like a top 5 unit. So they're going to have to carry that over obviously onto the on-field product, which I think in Vic Fangio's defense can be that. The question is, can they stay healthy, Tony?
Not necessarily just new additions, but of players that will be playing this season. So Von Miller counts in this. The Von Millers, the Ronald Darbys, Fuller from the Bears. Which of these guys do you think has a single biggest impact on the win column for the Denver Broncos in 2021?
I'd say Von Miller.
Von Miller?
I'd go with Von because Von's impact, Tony, we didn't get to see it last year, but I can tell you this. At training camp last year, he was virtually unstoppable. I mean, Garrett Bowles, Juwan James, these players, not Juwan James opted out, Elijah Wilkinson, they couldn't stop Von Miller. Von Miller came in the best shape of his career, and he was seemingly unblockable. And obviously another year in Vic Fangio's defensive scheme, you get Bradley Chubb back opposite of you. And when you have two legitimate pass rushers in Vic's defense, it can make things so much easier for everybody. It makes the corner's job easier, the safety's job easier. And when you have talented playmakers at those positions on the back end of that secondary, when your talent up front matches that, it creates opportunities. Tony, let's go back to 2015. The Broncos had a very stout defensive line. They had Von Miller, they had DeMarcus Ware on the outside, and they had dogs at cornerback and safety. They were able to generate takeaways and score defensively. Denver is looking to replicate that this year. I don't know. It's way too early to say that this could be the no-fly zone part 2, but I think on paper they have a strong secondary, and if that defensive pass rush can get home, Tony, Denver's going to have a lot of success. They're going to have a lot of takeaways. They need that. They didn't have too many takeaways last year. They need to increase that this season.
Do you think that that's the formula that they're taking? When we did win that Super Bowl in 2015, although we had a lot of big star name players on offense, they weren't that great of an offense that year. I remember it was, we're going to be a defensive team, don't turn the ball over, and we can win football games. Is that the approach you think that the Broncos are looking to have?
I think so, but I also think that the offense is expected to be much more improved this year, a second year in Pat Shurmur's scheme. They were very young. They were the youngest offense in the NFL last year. They're getting all those guys back here for year 2. Cortland Sutton's returning off of an ACL. You have Noah Fant. You have Albert Okwuegbunam. He's coming off of an ACL. And then you have Melvin Gordon. There's still some questions at running back right now behind him, even though they signed Mike Boone. But the offensive line played really well last year for Denver. When they were healthy, Juwan James is expected back at right tackle this year. There's no excuse, in my opinion, as to why this Broncos offense can't take the next step this year.
Absolutely. And, obviously, the biggest shoulders that's going to weigh on is Drew Lock, right? Drew Lock taking that next step is going to be the key to whether we become, an up-and-coming team or we're just mediocre again. But looking at the subtractions we made, why do you think they got rid of Phil, and what do we lose letting Philip Lindsay walk?
Well, it's a decision. I think for Broncos fans, it was rough. I don't know, Tony. You've had a chance to play against Phil when you were in high school. You know exactly what Philip Lindsay brings to the table. We saw what he did at CU. We saw what he did for 2 seasons as a Bronco, back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. I think for the Broncos, ultimately the writing was on the wall when they decided to sign Melvin Gordon instead of paying Philip Lindsay. And then Pat Shermer's offense, I think we really saw misutilize Phil, and I think that hurt Phil. And it also hurt Phil that he got hurt week 1 with that turf toe injury, and then you fast forward, you get a concussion against the Kansas City Chiefs. You miss that week, the remainder of that game. You come back the next week. And then because the NFL decides that the Broncos aren't going to go into a game with a quarterback, you force Philip Lindsay to play Wildcat. He gets his knee twisted up, misses the rest of the season. That really hurt Philip Lindsay's value, in my opinion, in terms of coming back to Denver. I mean, me personally, I came into the media world when Philip Lindsay was a rookie. I got to watch him when he was wearing that new jersey at the UC Health Training Center, and he's making cuts inside the A gap and the B gap, making linebackers like Brandon Marshall miss, and then obviously you still have those safeties there. It was a tough defense, and Philip Lindsay was breaking off big runs against him. That's one thing I will never forget. I mean, he's a guy that plays with heart. I mean, he's hard over height, and to me, I think that for Denver, they need to really bring in a guy, and they might have that in Mike Boone. Mike Boone, I think, fits what Pat wants to do offensively, as much as it hurts to say if you're a Broncos fan in terms of recognizing what Philip Lindsay's at. But it was evident when Phil was in the game for Denver, they were running the ball. So the defenses would stack the box, they'd pinch the edge of the line of scrimmage, they'd stunt their linebackers. Phil had nowhere to go, right? And they were running him on the inside, which doesn't make sense because for me, when I look at Philip Lindsay, you got to run him on stretch plays, counter plays, toss plays, get him to the outside in space where he can work. And Denver, when Denver did that, he had success. I mean, I go back to the Miami Dolphins game. I even go back to a little bit of the KC game on Sunday Night Football. And it's unfortunate. My wife, she's not very happy. Because I bought her Philip Lindsay jersey for Christmas a couple years ago. She's not very happy now that one of her favorite players is no longer on the team. So I get it where Broncos fans are coming from, but we know the brutal business of the NFL. They're always looking to upgrade, and sadly, Philip Lindsay didn't fit into their plans.
The other acronym I've always known for the NFL is not for long. Nothing lasts very long. But okay, with everything the Broncos have done, so we shore up our defense, shore up our secondary, bring Vaughn back to fortify our pass rush. Every draft Nick has had us mocked to pick a corner. Now are we open to just taking best player available? Do we look at a Micah Parsons if he's on the board at 9?
I think that's certainly a possibility. Now, if the Broncos didn't get Kyle Fuller, I would have thought that, okay, cornerback is probably in play at pick number 9 for them. But then, they go and get that signing. I still expect Denver to draft a corner, but not with the first-round pick. Maybe round 2, round 3. I mean, this is a really deep cornerback class this year. Denver's going to get some guys, even keep an eye on the cornerback out of Stanford, Adebo. I like him. He's got 4.4 speed. He's 6'2", 195 pounds, lengthy. He's a smart guy as well. So maybe he can be a depth guy because Denver needs depth there regardless. You're 1 or 2 injuries away from having a very inexperienced secondary. But, outside of that, I think that Micah Parsons, if Denver's really looking to add that dynamic of a 4.4 speed linebacker who plays heavy against the run and can also track in coverage, you need a guy like that. I mean, look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against Kansas City when they had Devin White and Levante David. Guys who have that 4.4 speed can play the run aggressively and can cover. They really helped neutralize the threat that is Travis Kelce, who had a historic season from the tight end position in 2020. Denver is in that division. They need to be able to compete with that. Travis Kelce had 11 catches the last time these two teams faced off, over 100 yards. He hurt them. He was the biggest, nail in the coffin for the Broncos. And so Denver has to find a way to be able to adjust the NFL game where we see a lot more empty. We see a lot more 3-by-1 sets. I mean, it's a spread them out game now, and offenses want to put up points. Denver has to find a defense that can stop that can prohibit those points from being put up on the board. I think they're headed in the right direction, but Tony, I don't even want to shut the door yet. Maybe Denver, if they're really intrigued, if they're not completely sold on Drew Lock, what they do this week in free agency, whether or not they trade for a veteran quarterback like Gardner Minshew, Sam Darnold, or even Nick Foles, if they don't do any of those options, I would expect them maybe to look at trading up in the draft to get a quarterback. Could it be Zach Wilson? He's projected to go number 2 overall to the New York Jets, or could they maybe move up for a Trey Lance because there's some vibe that the Atlanta Falcons may want to try to take him at 4. We'll see what the cards lay, but I think it gives Denver the best option to look at the best player available, which I think is a good position for a team. I think you want to come to the NFL draft and you want to focus on, I want to get the best player available that can fulfill maybe a need that we're going to have for the team later on down the road.
If the Broncos, you just piqued my interest with the quarterback. if the Broncos were to trade up and shoot for one of these guys, obviously holding Trevor Lawrence out because I imagine the Jags are going to take him. Is Trey Lance after his pro day, after you seen him bulked up, bigger and whatnot, has he moved the needle to think that he's the guy for the Broncos if they are going to go in the direction of quarterback?
I think so. I think so a little bit. One of the things I was looking at, he's got a very small sample size. He's only played 17 collegiate games. And look at Drew Lock. He's only played 17 games as a starter in the National Football League. The thing that stands out to me about Trey Lance is some noticeable changes. And maybe it changes when you have a defense that's actually running in your face rather than a pro day. But his footwork seemed to be a little bit more refined. He wasn't so wide in his base. He was really tight. And his delivery on the NFL out route, the 12 to 15-yard out that you have to make in the NFL, a lot of quarterbacks, we see them throw that ball too far inside. That gives DBs a perfect chance to break on it, pick it, run it down the sideline for teams to do that. But even I think for that, he's miles ahead of where I thought he would be. He did have one game this year during the pandemic, and it was best game against Central Arkansas, and I think that you can burn that tape. I mean, even Daniel Jones said that you can't really invest too much in that game film alone. Now, even though he threw an interception, he wasn't as accurate. I believe he completed 50% of his passes. He took over the game with his on the ground, which is another element that he adds. And I think with his bulkier frame, he can do that at the next level here in the NFL. So we'll see if that increases his ranking amongst NFL GMs and executives come draft time.
I'm all about just getting some competition in there. I don't think Drew's done enough to not warrant competition. So I like you saying that. I would love it. Just looking at the NFL as a whole, what's the biggest free agency move you think? What's the biggest thing that's going to push some team from one tier on the NFL pantheon to another one this upcoming season? Which move do you think? Do you think maybe Dallas locking up Dak? Or does that not move?
Maybe. I don't know. It's tough because you pay Dak a lot of money. You have the wide receiving talent there, obviously. You still have Ezekiel Elliott. The offensive line, most of those guys took restructures on the contracts, converted them into signing bonuses. So that helps out. I think offensively, Dallas will be much better. What about them defensively, though? That's still their issue. Defense is a big issue for them. I think the pressure is on Mike McCarthy this season to really put something together because there were some rumors last year with how Dallas was playing that he could have been one and done as a head coach in his first year. So if the Dallas Cowboys don't win this year, he's more than likely going to be out of Dallas. So I think that's a big move for Dallas, obviously locking up their guy. You can take a look at the Matthew Stafford trade to the Los Angeles Rams. They just got Deshaun Jackson. You have Cooper Kupp, Deshaun Jackson, and, you have a strong running backs, young guys in Henderson. Maybe you can kind of piece together, LA trying to rise up once again, but it's really hard to tell. New England's out there making some power moves. You have Cam Newton back on a one-year deal. You have Hunter Henry, and you have Jonnu Smith at a double tight set there. And then you have Nelson Aguilar, who's a deep vertical threat. They're surrounding Cam Newton with weapons, but they're also surrounding, I think, if the Patriots decide to trade up for a quarterback, they're surrounding that guy with some weapons as well. So if they have to make a change, they can put that young guy in maybe at the halfway point of the season if Cam's not playing well, or even after this year, and they'll have some decency there. Defensively, they're still strong. You're going to figure out a way how to replace Patrick Chung, who just retired, but you get Dante Hightower back, and now you had Matthew Judon at the outside backer position. New England is in a window right now where, look, Buffalo, they're returning everybody. They're still going to be damn good and strong. They added Emmanuel Sanders there, so they're going to be tough. So I believe it's going to be a race between those two teams for the AFC East this year, and Belichick may have 2 to 3 more years left in the NFL, so I think the Patriots are really trying to push the needle a little bit closer.
They even got Van Noy back. That's another one that people haven't talked about. And I'm like, did you remember Van Noy?
How lucky?
That's like, yeah, it's a big move. But hey, man,
they even got Matt Patricia back this year too, man. So
yeah, he crawled back.
I don't know, man. The Patriot way, we see these coaches leave the Belichick tree, and they're like, you know what, it's not so good on my own, except Brian Flores. I think Brian Flores is actually doing a hell of a job in Miami. He's doing phenomenal things in the community, building a great culture there, and I think it's going to pay off for the Dolphins in the next 2 to 3 seasons as well. So he might be the one exception of the coaching tree there.
For as much flag as he gets from Denver, I don't think McDaniels is absolutely terrible. Did he gaff at the Tebow thing in the quarterback? Yes, but his first season, if I'm not mistaken, we started out 8-0 with Kyle Orton. If I'm not mistaken,
it was 5-0. It was 5-0. So they started off 5-0. They were getting there, but that talking to several former Broncos players, on this subject about Josh McDaniels, he tried to come in and install the Patriot way right away in Denver, and it didn't really work because Denver was so accustomed to having Mike Shanahan and that prestigious culture that he has created. And also you come in with Josh McDaniels, who is really not personable. He's not personable with his players.
Really
and
stoic.
There were a lot of situations. I mean, Brandon Marshall, he made Brandon Marshall be a rotational guy, Tony, through training camp in the first couple of games of that season until he had that moss catch against the Dallas Cowboys that helped put them up, I believe, to 4-0 on the season. So, yeah, Josh McDaniels, I just think that he's burnt too many bridges in the NFL. The Colts were one of those situations. He was going to be the head coach. He backed out last minute. He's going to be a Patriot for life, and more likely when Bill steps down, Josh is going to take over. Or, when Bill's done, they all might be done in the NFL.
That would be wild. I'm actually looking forward to the day Bill Belichick's not in the AFC anymore, because I'm going to see him as a threat for forever, no matter what. Unless we're playing in Denver. If we're playing in Denver, I got a lot of confidence against that guy. But yeah, man, it was great talking to you. I just wanted to catch up a little bit on the Broncos. Make sure all the fans and stuff on the Western Slope can know what's going on. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. Thank you so much for having me, my man. It's going to be a busy week in free agency for the rest of the league. The Broncos still may make a couple of moves. The door is not entirely closed on Kareem Jackson returning on a potential one-year deal with the organization that could help solidify their defense even further. If not, keep an eye on guys like Duke Dawson, Michael Ojemudia, and maybe even Will Parks coming back into the fold for Denver at this point in time. But Justin Simmons had his press conference today. It was great. He's a Bronco for the long term, and Denver's looking to make some moves to really contend in the AFC West in 2020.
Hey, man, well, we're looking forward to it. Any other big news, I'll definitely be reaching out to you. You were my Broncos guy. We really appreciate you. We love what you're doing, man. Keep it up.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate you, my man.
Hey, have a good one.